Hey everyone, welcome back to Masonzero MTG. You guys really liked my previous video where I covered several lesser known cards that you could try out in Commander. Those were definitely 5 of my favorite recent old border cards I discovered to highlight, but I managed to find a few more interesting niche and budget oriented cards that might have a home in some of your Commander decks. And I've got more thoughts on this too and more videos planned, so if you do like this series, please let me know with a like and a comment. Look at this dumb artifact. Temporal Aperture costs 2 mana to play and 5 to activate. When you activate it, you shuffle your library, then reveal the top card. Then as long as it stays there, you can cast it for free. This is ideal in a big mana colorless deck and sees a little bit of play in Karn, Silver Golem, and Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger. It fits in nicely with other cards that cast things for free, and I think fits well in any deck that has a higher than average mana curve. The biggest thing preventing this from being a staple in more decks is that you can't manipulate the card at all. You shuffle as part of the activation, so any sort of scrying or top deck manipulation is totally useless, and it only affects one actual card, so taking cards off the top of your library doesn't help it either. Devotion cards like Grey Merchant of Asphodel and Nykthos Shrine of Nyx get a lot of attention, but let me bring your attention to Caretas Acolyte. This green card taps to add green mana equal to your devotion to green. Now its floor is a 4-cost mana dork that taps for 1 mana of one single color, but the ceiling is much higher, especially in a mono green deck that can afford to be playing cards with 2, 3, or 4 green mana symbols in their cost. This is obviously a good inclusion for big commanders such as Ghalta Stampede Tyrant or Gargos Vicious Watcher, the latter of which really wants big mana. If you can't afford Gaia's Cradle, Nykthos, and other expensive mana producers, this uncommon is a decent budget option to ramp you out. World Queller is a Zendikar rare, and it's a unique sacrifice effect in white of all colors. At the beginning of your upkeep, you can choose a card type, and each player sacrifices a permanent of that type. This is an interesting, repeatable way to get rid of planeswalkers, or you can choose lands and benefit from Hazazon or any number of other possible lands commanders. According to EDHREC, it's actually used mostly in white tax decks, but is also popular in Karman Cruel Skymarcher, which is maybe its most synergistic home. I would rate this card pretty similarly to Anawan the Ruin Sage, in that it's not all that great. However, I think the added flexibility to choose the card type is interesting, and I would love to see this card played in more budget decks. Prowling Geistcatcher is only a few years old, but it is from Midnight Hunt Commander decks, and it may have flown under your radar because of that. This card is a must-have for just about any sacrifice deck. Whenever you sacrifice a creature, you exile it with this card, then when the Geistcatcher dies, you get to return all the cards to the battlefield. It even takes tokens into consideration, giving the Geistcatcher a +1/+1 counter if a token was sacrificed. This is a pretty great ability, allowing you to bring back your sacrificed creatures all with just one card. And if you have any sacrifice abilities on the board via an enchantment or something, you can hopefully sacrifice the Geistcatcher at instant speed and control the exact timing of these creatures coming back, as well as potentially saving it from being exiled and ruining the whole thing. And if you put this in a black-red deck that might steal opponents' creatures, you'll be happy to realize that this will also function with any creatures you sacrifice that you control but don't own. Scarecrone is a card I probably wouldn't have found if it wasn't for opening it from the list in a booster pack a while back. For 3 mana, you get a 1/2 artifact creature with 2 activated abilities. The first one lets you pay 1 and sacrifice a Scarecrow to draw a card. You likely won't have other Scarecrows, so this is more of a way to cash in on the card when you're done with it. Its main ability is that you can pay 4 and tap the Scarecrone to return an artifact creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. This can be a very useful ability in multiple types of decks. In an artifact-heavy deck, this can be a repeatable way to get back a destroyed artifact creature that you need, and it can also cheat a large creature like Mere Battlesphere or Wormcoil Engine into play if it's dead or discarded. I personally play it in my Teshar deck, but in any deck that is consistently putting cards into the graveyard through discard or sacrifice or mill, Scarecrone can make sure you keep getting your valuable artifacts back into play. Thanks for joining me again for this silly video series. If you guys like this one as well, I'll be sure to add this series to my rotation on this channel. I certainly have more interesting cards that you might not know about, hidden away, ready to talk about. So let me know what you think of these cards, and if you have any more hidden gems that you like to play. But first, I want to thank LDB Duel for sending me this awesome deck box. They make custom deck boxes, playmats, and more, but what makes them stand out from the competition to me is that they actually employ a graphic designer that can work with you to create your own custom art for your card game accessories. But they also have a lot of pre-made options, like this one that I asked for, with the stained glass mana symbols from Dominaria United. The art printing is high quality both in terms of resolution and color. The deck box itself is a really cool design, where this magnetic cover comes off to reveal 2 removable boxes, one for your deck and another where you can put dice, tokens, or whatever. The build quality seems great, and I'll definitely be using this when I go out to play Commander. You can use my link, which is on screen or in the description, to get 10% off your first order from LDB Duel, and that's going to be ldbduel.com/discount/Masonzero10. Or you can use Masonzero5 to get 5% off any subsequent orders. And if you do use these codes, I'll get a little bit of a kickback for it, so I appreciate that. And I definitely recommend checking them out if you're in the market for a deck box like this, or a playmat, or something like that.